Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear. Senate Republicans have blocked another attempt by congressional Democrats to suspend the nation's debt ceiling. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports the move comes a day after Republicans blocked much of the proposal both the debt default and a government shutdown.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says Democrats want bipartisan support for raising the debt ceiling since it's been pushed up by increased spending by both parties.
The debt ceiling has been raised 80 times over the past 60 years under both Democratic and Republican presidents, under both unified and divided government. The Republican leader himself 2 years ago said we needed to raise the debt ceiling because, quote, America can't default, otherwise that would be a disaster. His words.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says Republicans will not vote to help Democrats increase the borrowing limit. If Congress fails to reach an agreement, the government could exhaust its cash reserves by mid-October. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
Testifying before Congress today, the nation's top U.S. military officer called the withdrawal from Afghanistan a logistical accomplishment but a strategic failure. Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, saying he believes the U.S. should have kept several thousand troops in Afghanistan to prevent a rapid Taliban victory. Milley also told lawmakers he believed it's, quote, a very real possibility that Al-Qaeda or the local Islamic State group's affiliate would reconstitute in Afghanistan under Taliban rule. Officials in New York say a vaccine mandate for health workers that went into effect this morning hasn't caused major service disruptions. Many facilities are scrambling to find replacement workers. Here's NPR's Brian Mann.
Thousands of health workers around New York State are off the job, possibly for good, because they refuse to get vaccinated against coronavirus. Dr. Mitchell Katz, who runs New York City's public hospital system, told reporters he was able to adjust staffing without a loss of service to patients.
I have about 500 nurses who are not currently at work, so we anticipated that there would be some loss of staff. We knew that no matter what our efforts, some people were not going to get vaccinated, but it's all working.
Katz said the mandate motivated many workers to get vaccinated before last night's deadline. A similar vaccination mandate for New York City public education workers is slated to take effect Monday. Brian Mann, NPR News.
An investigation continues into the derailment of an Amtrak train in rural Montana over the weekend that left 3 people dead, including a Georgia couple cross-country trip celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. The Amtrak Empire Builder was en route from Chicago to Seattle when it derailed Saturday with 141 passengers and 16 crew members on board. Dozens were injured. Stocks plunged on Wall Street today. The Dow dropped 569 points. The Nasdaq fell 423 points. This is NPR.
What happened in Afghanistan and why? Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin was on hand to account for failures during the U.S. withdrawal. Joint Chiefs of Staff General Mark Milley spoke about Afghanistan and took questions about his role at the end of the Trump presidency. NPR Pentagon correspondent Tom Bowman joins us with more. Hi, Tom.
Hey, good to be with you.
So, what can you tell us about General Milley's appearance today?
Well, of course, the hearing comes after what many Democrats and Republicans say was a hasty and disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think General Milley knew it would be combative at times. He, of course, had been prepared for the obvious questions about whether there were too few troops, whether more time was needed. And it wasn't just about Afghanistan. There was also the report in the book by author Bob Woodward that General Milley made what was described as secret calls to his Chinese counterpart, General Lee, in the final chaotic weeks of the Trump administration. Intelligence reports said the Chinese were on high alert. Milley tried to calm things down, assuring the Chinese that no U.S. attack was coming. And Milley said senior Pentagon, state, and White House officials were aware of the 2 calls, and there was a readout after them. So clearly not secret, he said.
And back to Afghanistan, what did General Milley say about that?
Well, the general said the speed of the Afghan military collapse, just 11 days, surprised everyone. The earliest estimate, he said, was sometime in the fall. So the Taliban return to power was a major theme. Democrat Jeanne Shaheen, the senator from New Hampshire, talked about the failure to anticipate what happened with one pretty succinct question. Let's listen.
What did we miss?
I think, Senator, we absolutely missed the rapid 11-day collapse of the Afghan military, the collapse of their government. I think there was a lot of intelligence that clearly indicated that after we withdrew, that it was a likely outcome of a collapse of the military and a collapse of the government.
Okay, on that note, Tom, I want to get your reaction to a really striking moment from Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin's testimony today.
The fact that the Afghan army that we and our partners trained simply melted away, in many cases without firing a shot, took us all by surprise, and it would be dishonest to claim otherwise. We need to consider some uncomfortable truths, that we didn't fully comprehend the depth of corruption and poor leadership in the senior ranks.
You know, Layla, that really jumped out at me and frankly makes absolutely no sense. First of all, there were numerous government reports from the Afghan Inspector General, John Sopko, going back years, talking about corruption, the poor quality of the Afghan army leadership, desertions in the ranks. There were also CIA reports along these lines and U.S. government advisors, including the likes of Sarah Chase and others, who continually brought up corruption and cronyism. No one paid adequate attention, no senior leaders. And frankly, you know, I saw it myself. I would meet Afghan generals in the field over the years, and American officers would praise them. I'd go back just months later and find out these same Afghan officers, Leila, were either in jail or fired for corruption.
How's it going? Can I get a apple pecan salad? Can I get that with crispy chicken? Nice, and then just like a cup of ice water, and that's it.
Anything else for today?
No, that's it.
The A26 for Swinda.
Thank you.
Okay.
NPR's Tom Bowman, thank you so much for your reporting.
You're welcome.
Support for this podcast and the following message come from Ember Wave, the first wearable that uses temperature to help you take control of your comfort. Learn more at embrwave.com/NPR. Ember Wave, just press for relief.
Hey, this is Brandon Witt in New Orleans, and I'm celebrating with the pumpkin spice latte because I just heard from my oncologist. 2.5 years cancer-free.
No,
this
thanks.
podcast was recorded at...
It is 2:40 p.m. on Tuesday, September 28th, 2021.
Things may have changed by the time you hear it, but you should celebrate with a latte of your own. And maybe a brownie. Okay, here's the show.
Yeah, no better reason to celebrate than that. Like, that's amazing. Congratulations. Hey there, it's the NPR Politics Podcast. I'm Amy Carrasco. I cover the White House.
I'm Mara Eliason, National Political Correspondent.
And Tom Bowman is here. He covers the Pentagon for us. Hi, Tom.
Good to be with you.
So Tom is here with us today because today top Pentagon officials are testifying before the Senate. It was the first time since the completion of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and it was very contentious.
Why would you propose a plan that didn't get all American citizens out? I just can't imagine ever in the history of this country our U.S. military would propose to leave a country without our citizens coming out first. I mean, have we ever done that before?
All of the American citizens wouldn't leave, Senator, unless there was a non-combatant evacuation. And, you know, the plan was to leave the embassy there.
That was Republican Senator Rick Scott questioning Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. Austin was testifying with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, and Commander of U.S. Central Command, General Kenneth McKenzie. And clearly, this comes after a very chaotic, a very controversial drawdown in Afghanistan that drew criticism from allies, from the Republicans, from Democrats. Tom, what did they have to say about how this withdrawal played out?
Well, they tried to put the best face on it. Lloyd Austin, the defense secretary, touted the scale of the airlift, the largest airlift in U.S. history. 124,000 Afghans were pulled out, and about a third of those are off to European countries. General Mark Milley acknowledged that, listen, the war didn't end the way U.S. had hoped with the Taliban in charge, but he said, listen, the Afghan military collapsed in 11 days. The earliest estimate was sometime in October, November maybe, but he noted, listen, the U.S. did not have advisors in the field for the past 3 years with the Afghans, and it's hard to assess morale or will to fight without Americans and Afghans actually together in the field.
One thing that the Republicans kept and that the administration should have asked the Pentagon about the possibility of keeping troops past the end of August sooner. That they should have looked into that. I mean, that's one of the big criticisms of the way this was handled.
That's right. And Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, was asked about that today because remember, President Biden went on ABC and told George Stephanopoulos that he did not get advice from his military advisors to stay, even though today you heard testimony that some of his military advisors did say he should leave 2,500 troops there. Today, Jen Psaki tried to clarify that and said that the advice President Biden got from his military advisors was split. In other words, there was a whole range of risk assessments. It wasn't as if they unanimously said that 2,500 troops should stay there. But that is something that Republicans really hammered on, that Joe Biden was not being truthful when he told George Stephanopoulos that his military advisors did not suggest to him or advise him to keep troops there. They're trying to attack the president's credibility in addition to relitigating what is clearly the worst episode of Biden's presidency so far, where he made a big miscalculation that it would be possible to get U.S. troops and U.S. citizens out of Kabul without a loss of life.
This is one of the biggest, well, it has been the biggest crisis of outside of the pandemic of his administration so far. Do you feel like the political argument that it was time to get out? Do you think that continues to kind of stand up when he's facing this onslaught of questions of why did you allow why did you pull the troops out without getting all the Americans out? Why you had American troops die? Do you think that they're able to keep that argument?
Well, I think I'd call this a miscalculation rather than a crisis, because the policy that you're referring to, the decision to pull out of Afghanistan, is supported by majorities of Americans. It was the execution of that policy, the fact that you had soldiers and service members die as the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan, the fact that the military didn't anticipate the speed